The sound of splintering wood echoed across the valley as Helena Zimmerman drove another nail into the fence post, her arms burning from the strain. She had been out here since dawn, and the Arizona sun now beat down mercilessly on the land her husband had loved, the land that was now hers alone after Thomas died 3 months ago from pneumonia that had settled deep in his lungs. The fence stretched for miles across their property outside Calico, and she knew that fixing it all herself would take weeks, maybe months, but she had no choice. The ranch hands had left after Thomas passed, seeking work elsewhere when she could no longer afford to pay them, and at 24 years old, she found herself completely alone with 500 acres of struggling cattle, ranch, and debts piling up like tumbleweeds against a fence line. Her hands were blistered and raw, the leather gloves she wore doing little to protect skin that had grown soft during the final weeks of nursing Thomas through his illness. She had barely left his side then, watching him fade a little more each day until he simply stopped breathing one cool March morning. Now it was June of 1887, and she was drowning in responsibilities she had never been trained to handle. Thomas had always been the one to manage the ranch operations while she kept the house and helped with the bookkeeping. She knew cattle and horses well enough, but the physical labor of maintaining a spread this size was proving nearly impossible. Helena wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her arm and surveyed the section she had just repaired. It would hold for now, but she could see at least a dozen more breaks in the fence line stretching toward the horizon. The cattle had been pushing through, wandering onto neighboring properties, and she had already received 2 complaints from other ranchers in the area. If she did not get this fixed soon, she would lose what little goodwill remained in the community. She was reaching for another board when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Her hand instinctively moved to the rifle she kept propped against the fence post, a habit born from the reality of being a woman alone in country that could be unforgiving. But as the rider came into view, she relaxed slightly. He sat tall in the saddle, his posture easy and confident, and he wore the clothes of a working cowboy rather than the rougher attire of the drifters who sometimes passed through looking for trouble. "Afternoon, madam," he called out as he drew closer, tipping his hat to reveal sun-bleached brown hair and eyes the color of strong coffee. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with the lean, weathered look of someone who had spent most of his life outdoors. "I hope I am not intruding. I saw you working out here and thought you could use some help." Helena straightened, suddenly aware of how she must look with her hair falling from its pins and her face streaked with dust and sweat. "I appreciate the offer, but I can manage." The cowboy dismounted with practiced grace, his movements fluid and sure. "I do not doubt you can, madam, but managing alone and managing with help are 2 different things. Name is Jesse Kane. I just hired on at the Patterson spread next door, and the boss mentioned you might be having some trouble with your fences." She felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. Of course the neighbors were talking about her. The young widow who could not keep her property in order, who was probably going to lose everything within the year. "Mr. Patterson is very observant," she said, hearing the edge in her own voice. "But I did not ask for help, and I cannot afford to pay for it." Jesse Kane picked up one of the fallen fence boards, examining it with the eye of someone who knew what he was looking at. "Did not ask for payment. Just seems wrong to ride past someone struggling when I have the time and the strength to lend a hand." He looked at her directly then, and she saw no pity in his expression, only honest concern. "My mama raised me better than that." Helena wanted to refuse. Pride was about all she had left these days, and accepting charity from a stranger felt like admitting defeat. But as another section of fence groaned in the wind, threatening to collapse entirely. Practicality won out over pride. "All right," she said quietly. "I would be grateful for the help. I am Helena Zimmerman. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Zimmerman." Jesse set his hat on the fence post and rolled up his sleeves. "Why do not you show me what you have been doing, and we can work together to get this section finished before dark?" They worked in companionable silence at first, Helena showing him how Thomas had always preferred to brace the corner posts, and Jesse nodding his approval at the technique. He was stronger than her, able to drive the heavy posts into the hard ground with steady, powerful strikes of the post driver, but he never made her feel inadequate. Instead, he positioned himself to handle the heaviest work while leaving her tasks that required skill rather than brute strength. "How long have you been at this today?" he asked after they had been working for about an hour. "Since sunrise," Helena admitted, hammering a nail into place. "I have about 2 miles of fence line that needs repair, and that is just what I have found so far. The winter was hard, and I was too busy with my husband to check the boundaries." Jesse paused in his work, looking at her with understanding. "Patterson mentioned you lost your husband recently. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She had learned to accept condolences without falling apart, though each one still felt like a small knife to the heart. "Thomas was a good man. He built this ranch from nothing, and I intend to keep it running if I can. How many head of cattle are you running?" "We had about 200 before winter. I lost some to the cold and probably more that wandered off through these broken fences. I have not done a proper count in weeks." Jesse drove another post into the ground, his muscles flexing with the effort. "You are going to need help rounding them up before you can get an accurate count, and you will need to get these fences secured before you try to keep them contained." "I know." Helena felt the weight of it all pressing down on her shoulders again. "I am working as fast as I can. I can see that." He straightened, pulling off his gloves to wipe his hands on his pants. "Look, I know you said you cannot afford to pay anyone, but what if we worked out a trade? I help you get this place back in order, and you provide meals while I am working. Patterson's cook is terrible, and I have been dreaming of home-cooked food since I left Kansas 3 months ago." Helena studied him carefully, looking for any sign of ulterior motives, but his expression remained open and honest. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me." "True enough," Jesse acknowledged, "but I know what it is like to be alone and struggling. After my father died, my mother tried to keep our farm going by herself. She was too proud to ask for help, and she worked herself nearly to death before the bank finally took the land. I was 16 and could not do enough to save it." He met her eyes steadily. "I cannot go back and help her, but I can help you. Sometimes that is how it works." Something in Helena's chest loosened at his words. Here was someone who understood, who had lived through something similar and was not offering help out of pity but out of genuine fellow feeling. "I am a decent cook," she said slowly, "and I suppose I could use the company. It gets quiet out here." Jesse smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger. "Then we have ourselves a deal, Mrs. Zimmerman." They worked until the sun began to sink toward the western hills, casting long shadows across the range. In that time, they repaired nearly a quarter-mile of fence, far more than Helena could have accomplished alone. Her body ached with exhaustion, but it was the good kind of tired that came from productive work shared with capable company. "You should head back to the house," Jesse said as the light began to fade. "I will finish securing this last post and then ride back to Patterson's place." "You will come back tomorrow?" Helena asked, surprised by how much she hoped he would say yes. "If the offer of a home-cooked meal still stands." "It does. Come around noon and I will have dinner ready." Jesse retrieved his hat and settled it on his head. "I will be here, And Mrs. Zimmerman, you did good work today. Your husband would be proud. Helena watched him ride away, his figure growing smaller against the darkening sky. She picked up her rifle and the tools they had been using, loading them into the small wagon she had driven out that morning. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she did not have to lose everything after all. The house felt emptier than usual when she returned, the silence pressing in on her from all sides. She lit the lamps and prepared a simple supper, eating alone at the table where she and Thomas had shared so many meals. But tonight, the loneliness felt different somehow, less oppressive. She had something to look forward to tomorrow. True to his word, Jesse arrived the next day just before noon, riding up to the house on a sturdy bay gelding. Helena had prepared a substantial meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie made from the preserved fruit she had put up last fall. She watched from the window as he dismounted, taking off his hat and brushing the dust from his clothes before approaching the porch. "Something smells amazing," he said when she opened the door. "I have been thinking about this since I woke up this morning." Helena felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. "Come in and wash up. Dinner is ready." They ate at the kitchen table, and Helena found herself relaxing in Jesse's presence. He told her about growing up in Kansas, about learning to rope and ride from his father, about the farm they had lost, and his mother's eventual remarriage to a shopkeeper in Topeka. She in turn told him about meeting Thomas when she was 18, how he had been 20 years her senior but kind and patient, how he had courted her properly and promised her father he would take good care of her. "Did you love him?" Jesse asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I apologize. That was too personal." "No, it is all right." Helena considered the question. "I grew to love him, yes. It was not the passionate romance from novels, but it was real and steady. He was good to me and I miss him every day." Jesse nodded, understanding in his eyes. "My mother said that kind of love is often the best kind, the kind that builds slowly and lasts." After the meal, they rode out together to continue working on the fence line. Jesse had brought extra tools and supplies, purchased with his own money, he said, and they made excellent progress. As they worked, Helena found herself telling him things she had not spoken aloud to anyone, about her fears of losing the ranch, about the debts Thomas had hidden from her, about feeling completely unprepared for this life she now had to lead. "You are stronger than you think," Jesse said, bracing a post while she nailed the crossbeam. "Anyone who can keep going after what you have been through has steel in their spine." "I do not feel strong. I feel like I am one bad day away from falling apart completely." Strength is not about never being afraid or never struggling. It is about getting up every morning and doing what needs to be done even when you are terrified. That is exactly what you are doing. His words settled something inside her, and she found herself working with renewed energy. They fell into an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's movements, working together as smoothly as if they had been doing this for years rather than days. Over the following weeks, Jesse came every day except Sundays. He would arrive at noon, share a meal with Helena, and then they would work until dark on whatever needed attention. They finished repairing the fence line and then moved on to other projects, fixing the barn roof, clearing brush from around the buildings, and finally beginning the process of rounding up the scattered cattle. Helena learned to read Jesse's moods and expressions, recognizing the slight tightening around his eyes when he was worried about something, the way his shoulders relaxed when he laughed, the focused intensity he brought to difficult tasks. She found herself looking forward to his arrival each day, preparing meals with extra care, choosing her clothes more thoughtfully in the mornings. One afternoon in late July, As they were taking a break in the shade of an old cottonwood tree, Jesse asked, "Have you given any thought to what you will do when winter comes? This place is too much for one person to manage year-round." Helena had been avoiding thinking about it, but she could not ignore reality forever. "I know. I have been hoping I might be able to sell some cattle in the fall, use the money to hire a hand or two, but I am not sure I will have enough to make it worth their while. What about selling the ranch?" The suggestion hit her like a physical blow. This was Thomas's dream. I cannot just give it up. "It was his dream," Jesse said gently. "But he is gone, Helena. What do you want?" She had not given herself permission to think about what she wanted, too focused on what she thought she should do, what Thomas would have wanted, what was expected of her. "I do not know," she admitted. "I never planned for this life. I thought Thomas and I would grow old together, that I would always have him to lean on. Now I am trying to be him and me both, and I am not sure I can do it." Jesse reached over and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. It was the first time he had touched her beyond the accidental brush of fingers while working, and the contact sent a jolt through her entire body. "You do not have to decide everything today. Just take it one day at a time." Helena looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between his sun-darkened skin and her paler fingers, and felt something shift inside her chest. When had Jesse stopped being just a helpful neighbor and become something more? When had she started thinking about him last thing before sleep and first thing upon waking? When had his smile become the best part of her day? She pulled her hand back gently, suddenly frightened by the intensity of her feelings. "We should get back to work." If Jesse noticed her withdrawal, he did not comment on it. They spent the rest of the afternoon rounding up strays, working in a silence that felt heavier than their usual comfortable quiet. But that night, alone in her bed, Helena could not stop thinking about the warmth of his hand in hers, about the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention, about the possibility of feeling something other than grief and loneliness. The next day, Jesse did not come at noon as expected. Helena waited, keeping the food warm, telling herself he must have been delayed with work at the Patterson ranch. But as the afternoon wore on with no sign of him, worry began to gnaw at her. Had she offended him yesterday by pulling away? Had he decided this arrangement was too complicated? She was considering riding over to Patterson's place when she finally saw a rider approaching. But it was not Jesse. Instead, Mr. Patterson himself rode up to her porch, his weathered face grave. "Afternoon, Mrs. Zimmerman. I am afraid I have some bad news. Jesse had an accident this morning while breaking one of my horses. The animal threw him, and he hit his head pretty hard. Doctor says he will be fine, but he is resting at my place and will not be able to come around for a few days." Helena's heart clenched with fear. "Is he truly all right? Can I see him?" Patterson's eyebrows rose slightly. "I suppose that would be fine. He has been asking about you, wanting to make sure someone let you know he would not be able to keep his commitment." Helena did not bother changing her clothes or fixing her hair. She quickly covered the food she had prepared, locked the house, and rode out with Patterson back to his ranch. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities, images of Jesse seriously hurt or worse. She had lost Thomas just 3 months ago. She could not bear to lose someone else she cared about. Patterson's ranch house was larger than hers, a sprawling adobe structure with a wide porch and well-tended gardens. He led her inside to a small bedroom where Jesse lay on a narrow bed, his head wrapped in white bandages, his face pale but his eyes open. "Helena," he said when he saw her trying to sit up. "Do not move," she ordered, rushing to his side. "Mr. Patterson said you hit your head." "It is not as bad as it looks. I have had worse falls." But even as he spoke, she could see him wince with pain. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, taking his hand without thinking about it. "You scared me half to death. When you did not come, I thought perhaps you had decided not to return, and then when Mr. Patterson told me what happened, I thought worse things." Jesse squeezed her hand gently. "I am sorry I worried you. I told Patterson I needed to get word to you right away, but the doctor would not let me ride out. Of course he would not. You need to rest and heal." She looked at the bandages, at the bruising already starting to show around his temple. "How long did the doctor say you need to recover?" "A week, maybe less if I am careful. But Helena, the fence work, the cattle, you cannot do it all yourself." "I will manage," she said firmly. "You focus on getting better. That is all I care about right now." Patterson appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Zimmerman, you are welcome to stay as long as you like, but if you want to get home before dark, you should probably leave soon." Helena looked at the sun slanting through the window and realized how late it had gotten. "I should go, but I will come back tomorrow to check on you." "You do not have to do that," Jesse protested weakly. "I know I do not have to, I want to." She stood but kept hold of his hand for another moment. "Rest, Jesse, please." She rode home as the sun set, her mind in turmoil. The fear she had felt when she thought Jesse might be seriously hurt had revealed the truth she had been trying to avoid. She cared about him, more than cared about him. Somewhere in the past weeks, she had fallen in love with the kind, hard-working cowboy who had offered his strength when she needed it most. But what did that mean? Thomas had only been gone 3 months. Was it wrong to feel this way so soon? What would people say? The questions haunted her through the night and into the next day. She prepared food to take to Jesse, making his favorite dishes, and rode over to Patterson's ranch in the afternoon. She found him sitting up in bed, looking better than he had the day before, the color returning to his face. "You should not have gone to all this trouble," he said when she unpacked the basket of food she had brought. "It was no trouble at all. Besides, you have been feeding me with your labor for weeks. It is past time I returned the favor properly." She arranged the dishes on a tray for him. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. The headache is not as bad and the dizziness has mostly passed. I have been thinking about your cattle situation. When I get back on my feet, we should organize a proper roundup. Patterson said he would lend some of his hands to help." "Jesse, you do not have to keep doing this. You have already helped me more than I had any right to expect." He set down the fork he had just picked up and looked at her seriously. "What if I want to keep helping? What if I have reasons beyond just being neighborly?" Helena's heart began to pound. "What kind of reasons?" "The kind where I cannot stop thinking about you. The kind where the best part of my day is sitting at your kitchen table. The kind where I am falling in love with you and have been for weeks now." He ran a hand through his hair, wincing as he jostled his injury. "I know it is too soon. I know you are still grieving your husband, and I know I have no right to say any of this. But when that horse threw me, and I was lying there on the ground, all I could think about was that I might not get another chance to tell you how I feel." Helena stood frozen, her emotions a tangled mess of joy and guilt and fear and longing. "Jesse, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, whether you want me to keep helping or whether you would rather I stay away, I will respect it. But I had to be honest with you." She moved to the window, looking out at the Arizona landscape she had come to love. "Thomas was a good man, and I did love him. But he was so much older than me, and our marriage was comfortable rather than passionate. I was content with that because I did not know anything different." She turned to face Jesse. "And then you came along, and suddenly I understand what I was missing. I think about you constantly. I look forward to seeing you every day. When Patterson told me you were hurt, I felt like my heart would stop. But Jesse, Thomas has only been gone 3 months. What kind of woman falls in love with another man so quickly? Jesse started to get up, but she hurried over and pushed him gently back onto the bed. Stay still. You are supposed to be resting. Then come here where I can see you properly. He took her hand and pulled her down to sit on the edge of the bed. Helena, there is no timeline for grief or for healing. You loved your husband and you mourned him honestly, but he would not want you to be alone forever, would he? No, she admitted. Thomas told me before he died that he wanted me to be happy, that I was too young to spend the rest of my life as a widow. I thought he was just rambling because of the fever, but maybe he knew what he was saying. You are 24 years old. You have so much life ahead of you. And if you will let me, I would like to share that life with you. Not to replace your husband, never that, but to build something new together. Helena looked at their joined hands, at the calluses they both bore from hard work, at the way her smaller hand fit so perfectly in his. I am afraid, she whispered. I lost Thomas and it nearly destroyed me. If I let myself love you and then lose you too, I do not think I could survive it. Love always involves risk. But I can promise you that I will do everything in my power to stay alive and healthy and by your side for as long as possible. And in the meantime, we will have whatever time we are given. Is not that worth the risk? She thought about the past weeks, about how alive she had felt working beside him, laughing with him, learning to see herself through his eyes as someone strong and capable. She thought about the emptiness of her house when he was not there, about the way her heart lifted every time she saw him riding up the path. She thought about the possibility of years of this companionship, of building something real and lasting. Yes, she said finally. Yes, it is worth the risk. Jesse smiled, that wonderful smile that made her feel warm all through. He reached up with his free hand and cupped her cheek gently. May I kiss you? Helena nodded, and he drew her down slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But she did not want to change her mind. She wanted this, wanted him. Their lips met softly at first, a gentle exploration, and then with growing warmth and certainty. It was everything her practical marriage to Thomas had never been, passion and promise and the feeling of coming home all wrapped together. When they finally pulled apart, Jesse was grinning despite the pain the movement must have caused his injury. I have wanted to do that for weeks. Only weeks, Helena teased, feeling lighter than she had in months. I have wanted to do that since the first day you showed up at my fence line. Then we have wasted a lot of time. We will make up for it. Over the next week, Helena visited Jesse every day, bringing food and conversation and slowly deepening affection. She watched him heal, saw the bandages come off and the bruising fade, and felt her love for him growing stronger with each passing day. Patterson noticed, of course, and so did his wife. But if they had opinions about the speed of the widow's new romance, they kept them to themselves. When Jesse was finally cleared by the doctor to return to work, he came straight to Helena's ranch. She was in the kitchen when she heard his horse, and she ran out to meet him, propriety forgotten in her joy at seeing him healthy and whole. He caught her as she flew off the porch, swinging her around in a circle before setting her down and kissing her thoroughly. I missed you, he said against her lips. I saw you yesterday. Still missed you. They stood wrapped in each other's arms for a long moment before Helena reluctantly pulled back. We should talk about what happens next. I have been thinking about that. Jesse took her hand and led her to the porch steps where they sat side by side. I have some savings put by, enough to maybe buy a small herd of cattle. What if I invested it in your ranch, became a partner instead of just hired help? We could build this place together. Jesse, I cannot ask you to risk your money on a struggling ranch. You are not asking. I am offering. I believe in this place and I believe in you, in us. Helena looked out at the land she had been trying so hard to save on her own. What about Patterson? You are working for him. I have been thinking about that too. What if we approached him about a trade? He has been wanting to expand his water rights, and you have that spring in the northwest corner of your property. Maybe we could work out a deal where he gets access to the water, and we get the loan of his ranch hands when we need them, plus a fair price for our cattle when it comes time to sell. That might actually work. Helena felt hope rising in her chest. Thomas always said that spring was the most valuable part of this property. Then let's talk to Patterson tomorrow, but tonight I have a different question to ask you. Jesse shifted to face her fully, his expression serious. Helena, I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but I am 27 years old and I have known enough loss and struggle to recognize something precious when I find it. I love you. I want to marry you, to build a life with you here on this ranch. I want to wake up beside you every morning and work alongside you every day and fall asleep holding you every night. Will you marry me? Helena knew she should probably take time to think about it, should consider what people would say, should be practical and cautious. But she had been practical her whole life, marrying Thomas because it made sense, running this ranch because it was expected. For once, she wanted to follow her heart. Yes, she said, joy flooding through her. Yes, I will marry you. Jesse kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring all his love and promise into the connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. How soon? How soon can we arrange it? There is a circuit preacher who comes through Calico once a month. He is due back next week. Then next week, Helena said decisively. I do not want to wait any longer than necessary. They talked late into the night, making plans and dreaming about the future. Jesse would move his few belongings from Patterson's bunkhouse to Helena's ranch house. They would work the land together, building the herd back up, making the necessary repairs and improvements. They talked about children eventually, about the family they would create together, about growing old on this land they both loved. The next day, they rode over to talk to Patterson about the water rights. The older rancher listened to their proposal with a thoughtful expression, occasionally asking questions or raising concerns. In the end, he agreed to the deal, pleased to secure reliable access to the spring and happy to support the young couple. You are good for each other, Patterson told them as they finalized the arrangement. And Jesse, I am glad you found a reason to stay in Arizona. I would have hated to lose a good hand. You are not losing him entirely, Helena said. We will still be neighbors, and I am sure there will be times we can help each other out. The wedding took place the following Tuesday in the small church in Calico. Helena wore her best dress, a deep blue that brought out the color of her eyes, and Jesse borrowed a suit from Patterson that fit him reasonably well. There were few guests, just Patterson and his wife, a few neighboring ranchers, and some of the townspeople who had known Thomas and wished Helena well. If anyone thought it was too soon after her first husband's death, they had the grace not to say so to her face. As Helena stood beside Jesse and listened to the preacher recite the marriage vows, she felt Thomas's presence like a gentle blessing. He would have wanted this for her, would have wanted her to find love and partnership and joy. She was not forgetting him or replacing him. She was simply moving forward, as everyone must after loss. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jesse kissed her with such tenderness and love that Helena felt tears prick her eyes. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. They held a small reception at the ranch house afterward, with food and music and dancing. Helena laughed more than she had in months, whirling around the yard in Jesse's arms as someone played a fiddle. The sun set over the Arizona hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Helena felt like she was watching the dawn of a new life. When the guests finally left, Jesse and Helena stood on the porch together, watching the last wagon disappear down the road. "Alone at last," Jesse said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Helena leaned back against his chest, feeling safe and loved and hopeful. "Are you ready for this? Being married to a widow with a struggling ranch and more problems than solutions. I married you, not your problems. And we will figure it out together. That's what partners do." They went inside, and Jesse carried her over the threshold despite her laughing protests. He set her down gently in the bedroom that had once been hers and Thomas's, but was now theirs, hers and Jesse's, the beginning of a new chapter. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies and hearts, and Helena discovered that passion she had always read about but never truly experienced. Afterward, wrapped in Jesse's arms, she felt more content than she could remember feeling in years. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Jesse replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "And I will keep loving you for the rest of my days." The months that followed were not easy. The ranch required constant work, and there were setbacks and struggles. They lost some cattle to sickness, and an early frost damaged their winter feed. But they faced each challenge together, and somehow that made everything bearable. Jesse's strength and Helena's determination proved to be an excellent combination. In December, Patterson hosted a Christmas gathering and invited all the neighboring ranchers. Helena and Jesse attended, and she noticed the way people looked at them, at the obvious affection and partnership between them. Some of the older women pulled her aside to tell her how happy they were to see her smiling again, how right she and Jesse seemed together. "You were brave to take a chance on love again so soon," one neighbor said. "A lot of women would have locked themselves away in grief." "I did grieve," Helena replied. "I still grieve for Thomas sometimes, but Jesse taught me that you can honor the past while still embracing the future." As winter gave way to spring of 1888, Helena discovered she was pregnant. She told Jesse one morning over breakfast, watching his face transform from surprise to absolute joy. "A baby." He came around the table and pulled her into his arms. "We are going to have a baby. In late summer, the doctor thinks." Jesse kissed her soundly, then dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you." Helena ran her fingers through his hair, overcome with love for this man who had come into her life when she needed him most. "You are going to be a wonderful father." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Helena continued to work on the ranch as long as she was able, with Jesse hovering protectively and trying to convince her to rest more. In late August, after a long and difficult labor, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Jesse Kane, honoring both the husband she had lost and the husband she had found. Jesse held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You did so well, Helena. He is absolutely perfect." Helena, exhausted but happy, watched her husband cradle their child. "Thomas would have loved him. I think he would have loved knowing you were happy and cared for. That is what matters." They settled into the rhythms of parenthood, taking turns walking the floor with a fussy baby, marveling over every tiny milestone. The ranch continued to improve under their joint management, and by the fall of 1888, they were turning a modest profit for the first time since Thomas's death. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with baby Thomas sleeping in Helena's arms, Jesse said, "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me so quickly after losing your first husband?" Helena looked at him in surprise. "Never. Not for a single moment. Why would you ask that?" "I just want to make sure you are happy, that you do not feel like I pushed you into anything before you were ready." She shifted the baby to one arm and reached for Jesse's hand with the other. "You gave me back my life when I thought I had lost everything. You showed me that it was possible to love again, to hope again, to build something new from the ashes of what I had lost. I will never regret that." Jesse brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you, Helena Kane. You and this little one are my whole world, and you are ours." The years flowed by, marked by hard work and growing prosperity. They expanded the ranch, built a new barn, and added to their herd. Helena proved to be just as capable a ranch manager as Thomas had been, with Jesse as her equal partner. They made decisions together, faced challenges together, and celebrated victories together. In 1890, Helena gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah. She had Jesse's brown eyes and Helena's determination, and she wrapped her father around her little finger from the moment she was born. Thomas, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything. As Helena recovered from the birth, Jesse sat beside her bed and said, "Our family is growing. This house is feeling smaller. Are you suggesting we build on?" "I was thinking about it. Maybe add a couple more bedrooms, expand the kitchen. What do you think?" Helena looked around the room where she had nursed Thomas through his final illness, where she had spent so many lonely nights after his death, where she had first made love with Jesse. "I think it is time for some changes. This house has good bones and good memories, but it could use some updating for the life we are building." They spent the next year slowly expanding the house, doing most of the work themselves with occasional help from neighbors. It was hard, tiring work on top of running the ranch and caring for 2 small children, but Helena loved every minute of it. This was their home, truly theirs, built with their own hands and filled with their love. In 1892, Patterson died peacefully in his sleep, and his widow decided to sell the ranch and move back east to be near her children. Jesse and Helena pooled their resources and bought the property, more than doubling their land holdings. It was a risk, taking on that much debt, but they had proven they could make the ranch profitable, and the additional land gave them room to expand their operation significantly. "We are doing it," Helena said one night as they reviewed the books. "We are actually building something substantial here." Jesse looked up from the ledger he had been studying. "Your late husband would be proud. He started with nothing and built a working ranch. We are taking that foundation and making it into something even bigger. I wish he could have met you. I think you two would have gotten along well. I would have liked that. Any man who loved you could not have been all bad." They laughed together, comfortable enough in their relationship to talk about Thomas without pain or jealousy. He was part of Helena's history, a chapter that had led her to where she was now, and Jesse understood that. The children grew, Thomas developing into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with the cattle, and Sarah proving to be a wild child who preferred climbing trees and racing her pony to anything resembling ladylike behavior. Helena and Jesse could not have been more proud of them both. In 1895, Helena gave birth to their third child, another boy they named William. Jesse was thrilled to have another son, and Thomas and Sarah were excited to have a baby brother to dote on. The house rang with laughter and noise, such a contrast to the desolate silence Helena had faced after Thomas's death. One evening, after they had finally gotten all 3 children to bed, Helena and Jesse collapsed onto the porch swing together, exhausted but content. "Do you remember the day we met?" Helena asked, resting her head on Jesse's shoulder. "How could I forget? You were the most stubborn woman I had ever met, insisting you could fix that fence all by yourself. I was terrified, of losing the ranch, of being alone, of admitting I needed help. And then you rode up and offered your strength so simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jesse put his arm around her and pulled her closer. I took one look at you standing there in the sun, all fierce determination and hidden fear, and I knew my life was about to change. I just did not realize how much. If you had told me that day that within a year I would be married to you and expecting our first child, I would have thought you were crazy. Would you have believed me if I told you that 8 years later we would have 3 children and one of the most successful ranches in the territory? Helena laughed softly. No, probably not. I could barely see past the next day back then. And now? She tilted her head to look at him, this man who had saved her in so many ways. Now I can see years and years stretching ahead of us, growing old together, watching our children grow and have families of their own, building this legacy we started. Jesse kissed her forehead. That sounds perfect. As the years continued to pass, their vision became reality. The ranch thrived, becoming known throughout Arizona as one of the best managed operations in the territory. Thomas grew into a fine young man who took naturally to ranching, learning everything Jesse could teach him. Sarah, despite her wild ways, developed a gift for breaking and training horses that brought in additional income. Young William showed signs of being the smartest of the bunch, always reading and asking questions about everything. In 1903, when Helena was 40 years old and Jesse was 36, they added one more surprise to their family. Helena had thought her childbearing days were over, but nature had other plans. Their 4th child, a daughter they named Rose, arrived in the spring. The older children were thrilled, treating the baby like a living doll to play with. 4 children, Jesse marveled, holding tiny Rose in his large, work-roughened hands. We have built ourselves quite a family. Getting cold feet, Helena teased. Never. I would have 10 more if you were willing. Well, I am not, so 4 will have to be enough. They laughed together, comfortable and easy after 16 years of marriage. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, cattle rustlers and financial setbacks, childhood illnesses and family crises. Through it all, their love had only deepened and strengthened. As Helena watched Jesse with their new daughter, she thought back to those dark days after Thomas died, when she had felt so alone and hopeless. She thought about the fence line where Jesse had first appeared, offering his strength without expectation of payment or recognition. That moment had changed everything. Thomas, now 20 years old, came to find them. Mother, father, we have got a problem with the fence line in the north pasture. Looks like someone cut it deliberately. Jesse handed Rose to Helena and stood up. I will go check it out. Thomas, saddle the horses. I am coming too, Helena said, passing the baby to Sarah. Helena, you just had a baby 3 weeks ago, and I can still sit a horse and think. Let's go. They rode out together as a family, as they had done countless times over the years. The cut fence was indeed suspicious, and they spent the afternoon investigating and making repairs. It reminded Helena powerfully of those early days when she and Jesse had worked side by side on fence repairs, falling in love while mending barriers. That night, after dealing with the fence situation and getting all the children to bed, Helena and Jesse finally had a moment alone. Do you remember the first fence we fixed together? She asked. Of course. I was trying so hard to impress you, to prove I could be useful. You did not have to prove anything. I knew you were special from the first day. Jesse pulled her into his arms. We have come a long way from that broken fence line. We have. But in some ways nothing has changed. We are still working side by side, still fixing problems together, still building something meaningful. I would not want it any other way. They stood together in the quiet of their bedroom, holding each other and reflecting on the life they had built. Outside, the Arizona night was cool and clear, Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The ranch spread out around them, hundreds of acres of land they had worked and improved and loved. Their children slept safely in their beds, the future generation of the Kane Ranch. It was everything Helena had thought she lost when Thomas died, and so much more than she could have imagined. The years continued their steady march. Thomas married a neighboring rancher's daughter in 1906 and brought her to live on the ranch, taking on more and more responsibility for the day-to-day operations. Sarah shocked everyone by marrying a banker from Calico, though she continued to train horses even after moving to town. William went away to university in California, the first member of the family to pursue higher education, though he promised to return and help manage the ranch's business affairs. Rose grew into a sweet, gentle girl who loved helping her mother in the house and garden. She reminded Helena of herself at that age, eager to please and quick to learn. Jesse doted on his youngest daughter shamelessly, unable to deny her anything. In 1910, Thomas and his wife presented Helena and Jesse with their first grandchild, a boy they named Jesse after his grandfather. Holding the baby, Jesse had tears in his eyes. "I never thought I would live to see this day," he said. "My grandson growing up on land we built together." Helena, now 47, and feeling the weight of years of hard work in her bones, smiled at her husband. "We have been blessed beyond measure, we have indeed." They stood together watching their son with his new family, and Helena felt a profound sense of completion. She had survived loss and grief, had found love again when she thought her heart was too broken to heal, had built a family and a legacy that would continue long after she was gone. All because a kind cowboy had stopped to offer his strength to a woman mending fences alone. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in the brilliant colors of an Arizona evening, Jesse put his arm around Helena and pulled her close. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one," she replied. "You gave me everything I needed when I needed it most. Your strength, your love, your partnership. You gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. You gave me this beautiful life. You did the same for me, you know. I was drifting before I met you, working from ranch to ranch with no real purpose. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to stay in one place and build something lasting." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and built something extraordinary from broken pieces. The ranch stretched out around them, solid and prosperous. Their children and grandchildren filled the house with laughter and life. The future was secure, the past honored, the present precious. In 1915, they celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary with a big party, inviting friends and neighbors from all over the territory. People came from miles around to celebrate the couple who had become something of a legend in the area. The widow and the cowboy who had built one of the finest ranches in Arizona through hard work, determination, and abiding love for each other. Sarah brought her family from town, including 3 rambunctious children who ran wild with their cousins. William had returned from California with his new wife and was helping to modernize the ranch's business practices. Rose, now 12, helped serve food and made sure all the guests were comfortable. Young Jesse toddled around getting into everything, with Thomas and his wife expecting their second child any day. As Helena looked around at the gathering, at the life she and Jesse had created, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She caught Jesse's eye across the crowd, and he smiled at her with the same warmth and love he had shown that first day at the fence line. After all these years, after everything they had been through together, that love had never wavered. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the children were settled, Helena and Jesse took their customary places on the porch swing. The night was warm and clear, perfect Arizona weather, and they sat in comfortable silence for a long while. "I was thinking about Thomas today," Helena said eventually. "My first husband, I mean. It has been almost 30 years since he died, and I can barely remember his face sometimes. But I remember how he made me feel safe and cared for, and I remember how lost I was when he was gone." Jesse took her hand. "Do you think he would approve of what we have done with his ranch?" "I think he would be amazed and proud. We took what he started and made it into something far beyond what he imagined. And I think he would be happy that I found love again, that I did not spend my life alone. I am grateful to him in a way. If he had not built this ranch, if you had not been here struggling with those fences, I might have just ridden on past and never known what I was missing." Helena laughed softly. "Everything happens for a reason, I suppose. All the joy and all the pain, it all led us here." They rocked gently in the swing, watching the stars come out one by one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new responsibilities, but tonight was for reflection and gratitude. They had built a good life together, a life worth celebrating. The next decade brought more changes and more blessings. Thomas and his wife had 3 more children. Sarah's family grew to include 5 children in total. William and his wife added 2 sons to the family tree. And even young Rose eventually married a local rancher's son and presented Helena and Jesse with 2 more grandchildren. The ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's management, with Jesse and Helena gradually stepping back from the day-to-day operations, though they remained active in major decisions. They spent more time with their grandchildren, passing on stories and wisdom, teaching the next generation the values of hard work and integrity that had built the Kane Ranch. In 1925, Helena turned 62 and Jesse 58. They were slowing down, feeling the aches and pains of a lifetime of physical labor, but they were content. One evening, sitting in their usual spot on the porch, Jesse said, "I have been thinking we should write down our story. For the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they know how it all started." "What would we tell them?" Helena asked. "The truth. That you were alone and struggling, mending fences after your husband died. That I was a cowboy looking for a place to belong. That I offered my strength and you offered your heart, and together we built something that would last for generations." Helena nodded slowly. "It is a good story. A true story about how love can heal and how partnership can overcome any obstacle. Will you help me write it?" "Of course. We have always done everything together." They spent the winter of 1925 working on their story, writing down memories and organizing photographs, laughing over old adventures and marveling at how much had changed since those early days. It became a project that brought them even closer together, remembering the foundation of their love and the journey they had traveled. In the spring of 1926, they finished the manuscript and had it bound into a beautiful leather volume. They presented it to their children and grandchildren at a family gathering, and there was not a dry eye in the room as Jesse read selected passages aloud. "This is your heritage," he told the assembled family. "This ranch, this land, this legacy. It all started with love and hard work and determination. Your grandmother and I want you to remember that no matter what challenges you face, if you face them together with someone you love, you can overcome anything." Young Jesse, now 20 years old and helping run the ranch alongside his father, spoke up. "Grandfather, what was the most important thing you learned from building all this?" Jesse looked at Helena and they shared a smile. "That strength is not just about physical power. It is about being there for the people you love, supporting them when they need it, and letting them support you when you need it. When I offered my strength to your grandmother all those years ago, she gave me something far more valuable in return. She gave me purpose and love and a family. That is the real strength that built this ranch." Helena squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And I learned that it is never too late to start over, to find love again, to build a new life from the ruins of what you lost. I thought my life was over when my first husband died, but it was really just beginning. Never give up on yourself or on love." The family gathered around them, multiple generations connected by the love story that had started with a simple offer of help at a fence line. This was the legacy Helena and Jesse were leaving behind. Not just land and cattle and buildings, but the knowledge that love and partnership could create something lasting and beautiful. As the years advanced, Helena and Jesse gradually withdrew from active ranch management, spending their days enjoying the fruits of their decades of labor. They would sit on their porch for hours, watching their grandchildren and great-grandchildren play in the yard, marveling at how one chance meeting had led to all of this. Jesse's health began to fail in 1928, his heart growing weak from a lifetime of hard work. Helena nursed him tenderly, just as she had nursed Thomas so many years before, but this time with the accumulated knowledge of a long and happy marriage behind her. She read to him from the book they had written together, reminding him of all they had accomplished and all the love they had shared. "I am not afraid," Jesse told her one quiet afternoon. "We have had a good life, better than I ever dreamed possible. I am grateful for every day we had together." "Do not talk like that," Helena said, though she knew the truth. "You are going to be fine." "Helena, my love, we both know that is not true. But that is all right. I have no regrets. I got to spend over 40 years married to the woman I love. I got to watch our children grow and have children of their own. I got to build something that will last long after I am gone. Not everyone gets that." Tears streamed down Helena's face. "I do not want to lose you. You will never lose me. I will always be with you in this ranch we built together, in our children and grandchildren, in every fence post and every blade of grass. This is ours forever." Jesse passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days later with Helena holding his hand. She grieved deeply, this second loss cutting just as sharply as the first despite being expected. But this time, she was not alone. Her children and grandchildren surrounded her with love and support, and she found comfort in the knowledge that Jesse had died happy and fulfilled. The family gathered for the funeral, and it seemed like half of Arizona showed up to pay their respects to the cowboy who had become a legend. Story after story was told of Jesse's kindness, his fairness, his willingness to help anyone who needed it. He had lived his values, and everyone who knew him was better for it. Helena stood at the graveside as they lowered Jesse's coffin into the ground, and she thought about that day 41 years earlier when he had ridden up to her fence line and offered his strength. He had given her so much more than help with physical labor. He had given her hope and love and a reason to keep living. He had given her a family and a legacy. He had given her everything. After the funeral, Thomas approached his mother. "What will you do now, Mother?" "You are welcome to stay in the house, of course, but if you would rather move to town to be closer to Sarah, we would understand." Helena looked out at the ranch, at the land she and Jesse had worked and loved for so many years. "This is my home. This is where Jesse and I built our life together. I am not leaving." And she did not. Helena lived on at the ranch for another 8 years, an active and beloved presence in her children's and grandchildren's lives. She told stories about Jesse and Thomas, about the early days of the ranch, about the lessons she had learned from both loss and love. She was the matriarch of the family, the one who held them all together with wisdom and grace. In the spring of 1936, at the age of 73, Helena died peacefully in her sleep in the house she and Jesse had expanded together. Her family buried her next to Jesse under the big cottonwood tree where they had shared that first meaningful conversation all those years ago. The stone read, Helena Kane, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She found love twice and built a legacy that will endure forever. The ranch continued under Thomas's management and eventually passed to young Jesse and then to his children. The Kane Ranch remained one of the most successful operations in Arizona, a testament to the vision and hard work of the widow and the cowboy who had started it all with a simple offer of help at a fence line. Generations later, the story of Helena and Jesse was still told around dinner tables and at family gatherings. The leather-bound book they had written together was carefully preserved and shared with each new generation, ensuring that the love story at the heart of the Kane family legacy would never be forgotten. Their story became a reminder that strength comes in many forms, that love can be found even in the darkest times, and that what we build together with the people we love can outlast us all. Two people who met by chance at a broken fence line had created something extraordinary, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through steady, daily choices to love and support and build together. The ranch still stood, solid and prosperous, a living monument to what can be accomplished when two people offer each other their strength and build a life together, one fence post, one day, one moment of love at a time. And somewhere in the Arizona wind that blew across the land, you could still feel the echo of their love, as enduring and constant as the land itself.